call center people are not well trained. Let's spend more money there versus actually, guess what? You need to go fix your digital, which is causing all this bad volume to come in.
Hi, so Jason Barrow, partner, Bain, founder of the NPS Prism business.
And hello, everyone. Rahul Sethi, co-founder of NPS Prism and EVP at Bain. So, Jason, we're excited to talk today.
Yeah.
We are both excited. That's why we want to dive in. We are excited to talk about the digital versus human experience, and more specifically, what matters as our clients across industries think about that. One of the overarching questions Jason and I had, and would love to get your perspective given the work that you've done, not just at Prism, but beyond, is there really the right set of journeys that should be completely digital or should be completely human, or a mix of two? Like, how do you typically advise clients to think about that?
Yeah, it's not uniform at all. And so I think but it's also not fixed in time. So the way that we think about it is at any moment in time, there are some journeys that are ready to be digitized, and there are some journeys that are not, but could be digitized, and there are some that probably should never be. And I think one of the most common surprising things that our clients find in the data is that when we always talk about de-averaging the channel data. And
Right.
I usually break it into four pieces. I think of them as there are routine journeys, there are advice journeys, there are dispute journeys, and there are sales journeys. And what we see across industries in general is that routine stuff is fully ready to be digitized. Sales, some companies have really nailed it, and sales stuff fully can be digitized if it's built properly. Advice, it's really hard to digitize it, and it's really complicated to get that right. And disputes, it's really hard to get that right. And it makes sense once you tell the clients. It's like, it's really hard to say no digitally. And so they often build these digital, experiences for customers in disputes, but they don't think through what the customers are going to do if they go 3 swipes of the thumb and then they get an answer they don't want. They sort of envision that the customers just happily go away at that point. And that's just not the reality. And when that path of the experience happens, it goes really poorly.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of the things, and it's what we all really want. Like, one of the things we really dislike is calling the 800 number of our cable companies.
Yeah.
But the digital experience doesn't quite work yet, meaning that it doesn't fully solve the problems, and it doesn't really remove the need for me to end up having to talk to someone anyway. Like, if the information you're getting back from your cable company is not accurate or it's way too vague, it's like if you do a digital break fix experience with your cable company and it says, we realize your cable's out, it'll be back on sometime in the next 24 hours. That's not exactly what I was looking for. It's not precise enough. Or if you're giving me continuous updated repair times, like every time you go on the app that says, well, it'll be another 30 minutes, and then another 30 minutes. And then again, that's also not good enough. But if the customers could do 3 swipes of the thumb and get accurate information without them feeling like a live conversation is going to make their lives better, then that's exactly what they want. But it needs to, this is why, so the cable companies pushing stuff into digital, you sort of have to say, well, what's good enough for digital? And, and I saw this again with a health insurance company in the last couple of weeks. Like, they, the experience they were talking about was about the process of finding a doctor, where for the patient, that both means, are you getting good information on the quality of the doctor, all the way through to, can I make an appointment? You know what I mean? Like, that sort of start point to end point. But oftentimes the insurance companies will build these experiences that are only covering a bit of the middle, which is they can basically give you the list of doctors and their phone numbers. That's not complete enough. Like, it doesn't get me to the end point of the need we're solving. And therefore that's actually not very good.
It's interesting because I think the definition of digital first varies so much. I mean, in some ways, like, what is really good digital first? Digital first doesn't necessarily mean everything has to be digital, right?
No. And it's interesting because we see, like in banking, paying a bill, transferring money, those things, digital works supremely well across almost every institution. But you still have some institutions where they've got 10, 15, 20% of their customers doing these things in human channel. And it's like that's where the big digital push should be. How do you go from 85% penetrated digitally up to 95?
Right.
Like that's well worth doing because the marginal customer is actually going to end up preferring that digital experience to the human one. And so just teaching the customers how to do it digitally the next time is probably well worth doing. Whereas in the places where the digital isn't good enough, oftentimes the right answer is do it less. Like obviously there are some things you can go fix, like our friends in the Netherlands who seem to have figured out how to do certain types of disputing digitally. Like if there really is a way to go do it, like we've seen this comes up with digital claims in insurance where, in like we have insurance data across a lot of the world now,
Right.
but like it's not all that like in the US there isn't a ton of digital claims yet. Even the insurers who you would think were digital forward still do well less than half of their claims digitally. And so but there are other parts of the world where we hear that it's similar to my Netherlands friends. I think that there are some parts in Europe that have figured out digital claims and insurance. And this is what I meant at the beginning, that this isn't fixed in time. It's like, can digital disputing in bank eventually be good enough? The answer is probably yes. Can digital claims in insurance eventually be good enough? The answer is probably yes. But it requires more design work than what a lot of the institutions have already been doing. And you need to know that it's good enough before you try to have the lion's share of your customers do it that way. And that's one of the things that our data and our tools and our instruments really help the clients figure out is there are places where we should be pushing full forward right now, as much digital penetration as we can. That's where we're going to get the cost out of the call center. There are other places where the digital is not quite good enough yet, but it's close. And so what you're actually doing is having the digital team go make some new stuff. Go invent a bit, go make it better, go copy some of the places that have done this in a way that seems like it works better. And then there are some places where you say to yourself, you know what, we're probably still years away from this being good enough. That's where we should be using our call center capacity. And let's actually stop pushing our customers to do these things digitally, because in the end, it actually just hurts more than it ever helps.
Yeah. And do you think there's one of the things you mentioned is around insurance in the US, and we see this in insurance and banking. A lot of the mid to large sized financial institutions tend to kind of have pretty similar either digital mix or what they're pushing digitally versus not. And sometimes it's like a disruptor, like a chime that comes in and just changes how things need to be done, like opening an account.
Yeah.
So do we really need disruptors to shake up the industry, or and everyone is just following each other, or is there something else there?
Sometimes the disruptors are quite important. I actually do think that that's a real source of where innovation comes from. Like if you look at even the transferring money experience in bank, like that innovation came from outside bank first. Like that's Venmo and and PayPal and the like. And it's like, and that forced the banks to finally figure out, all right, that's what good enough in transfer looks like. How would we build that ourselves? And so again, I think that there's, I think some of that innovation often comes from outside a bit, and then it forces a bit of a redesign. That said, I think that there are companies within the spaces, the traditionals, who end up out in front on some of these innovations. And those end up being quite important, like the innovations in credit card on, being able to turn off a lost credit card, like that came from the big guys.
Yeah.
Like that was a digital innovation that dramatically improved that type of experience for credit card holders. That didn't have to come from an outside person. So there are places where the digital innovations, and again, I gave the Intuit example, like I think they are at the front end of digital innovation in their market. But you're right, in bank and in insurance, sort of the fintechs and the insurtechs, I think, are pushing the digital innovation frontier beyond where the traditionals would have gone without sort of needing the push.
Yeah. And then similarly in telecom, we see like Mint, for
Oh yeah.
example, really kind
Yeah,
of
well, Mint
disrupting
is
how the
Mint
experience.
is 2x digital. If you look across the journeys,
Yeah.
even the most digitized of the traditional, mobile phone players, Mint is doing things digitally at 2x the rate. And again, the interesting thing with Mint is that the reason they can do it. So, for instance, they've digitized sales and mobile phones at 2-3x the rate of all the other players. That's less about the digital tech and more about simplification of the product suite. If you think about it, like they've part of what makes it so hard to digitize the sales funnel for the traditionals is that there are too many choices,
Yeah.
sort of too many complicated configurations and pricing things. And also and like for cable, this is true. Like you feel like you're going to get a better deal if you're on the phone with a live person because there is some room for negotiation up front. And so there, obviously the pricing and package simplification, it's also a way that it enables more digital. But sometimes you have to do the pricing and packaging before you can get the benefits from the channel mix shift. And that can be a super hard thing for the traditionals because it's very hard for them to get away from the complexity of all the products and package stuff, particularly in telco.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But it does look like what's interesting about Mint as well is its digital is obviously, like you said, it's 2x in general stronger, but even its human is pretty good. So they seem to have
Right. But
like,
in the places where it should be.
yeah,
Like the interesting thing is that if you look for break fix for like if your phone breaks and at Mint, they only have some I haven't looked in a little while, but I think it's under 20% digital. Like all the other things are like 70-80% digital. But for break fix, this is what I meant. Like they know that that's not likely to go well digitally.
yeah,
And so that's where their call center is used. And it's like, but nobody uses the call center for paying the bill at Mint.
yeah,
Like they figured out how to bifurcate it. It's like for the things where digital works, great. For the things where digital doesn't, they don't force you into the digital funnel because it doesn't work right yet. And the interesting thing will be, can they make, will they be the ones that figure out how to do break fix digitally in mobile phones? But again, if there's a complicated diagnostic process, it's hard to do that digitally.
yeah, absolutely. They seem to have figured out, like to your point, the jumps between the channels. How do we make it
Yes,
effective by journey? We do continue to still see clients look at things in silo.
they do.
I would love to get your perspective on that. Just for example, sometimes they would care about just the channel
I know.
NPS score. Um,
Yeah, I mean, look, one of the things that one of the big high level things that we always try to get our clients to is this idea of sort of journey lens with a channel overlay as opposed to a channel lens. It's just a different way of thinking about the business, but sort of breaking
yeah,
it apart into what your customers are doing, regardless of how they're doing. And that's a more natural, we would say that's a more natural way to think about what's working, what's not working. That said, most of our clients are not organized that way. They're not organized with the P&Ls and the journeys, nor will they ever be. And so they always want to be able to have scores that are relevant to all the various leaders. And so they have people who are heads of call centers, heads of the digital team, heads of the branches, heads of the stores. Those people want their scores. They want scores that say, how happy are the customers in my part of the world? And it's not that it's impossible to get to a good number for them. The key thing is that you have to control for the mix of journey. Like if you're not controlling for how many disputes versus simple bill payments, like routine things go better on average.
yeah,
Sort of fights about money, fights about break fix, those go less well. And so if you're not controlling for journey mix, that channel score is just going to go up and down a bunch. The other thing is that, and my call center clients have always liked this point, which is all those customers who start in digital channel and fail and end up in call center end up in the call center score in these organizations. That's when the survey gets triggered because they didn't finish in digital. And so they show up as unhappy call center customers where the
yes,
source of their unhappiness is digital. And so oftentimes, if you're not controlling for this stuff right, and if you're not controlling for the channel jumping, you actually end up with slightly spurious data. You end up with scores that bounce from period to period, but it's not a difference in performance, it's just a difference in journey mix. And you can end up with a different answer in terms of which part of the organization needs to fix things
right,
if you end up with them showing up as unhappy. Like basically the unhappiest digital customers actually don't end up in the digital surveys ever. So
Yes.
digital always looks better than it should
Right.
be. Call center looks worse than it should be.
Yeah.
All my operations clients always love this point. It's like they'd known this for years and always wanted to yell at their digital colleagues. And it's like this data finally gives them some ammunition in that battle.
Yeah. And you end up like investing in the wrong places also, right? You would say your call center
Right.
people are not well trained. Let's spend more money there versus actually, guess what? You need to go fix
That's
their
right.
digital, which is causing all this bad volume to come in.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you the other thing that shows up in channel metrics is if you think about this journey mix thing,
Yeah.
if you're doing this right, you're taking the easy phone calls and making them go away, and you're leaving behind more complicated phone calls. And so, if you like, one of the things that call centers like to measure all the time is handle time. How
Hmm.
long are customers on the phone? And they try to suggest that shorter handle time is better.
Right.
But actually, in this model, what you want to be doing is getting the short, easy calls out of the system completely and leaving behind longer, more complicated calls
Yeah.
where the empathy and the niceness and the communications matter more. And you actually might want handle time to rise. That it may actually be a part of total cost savings because you're getting some number of the calls out of the system completely. And this is why if you're not measuring for journey mix right, you get these things backwards. It's like you're pushing for lower handle times at the same time that you're flooding your call centers with more complicated calls, and that doesn't work. That's a recipe for very unhappy customers as well as very frustrated frontline employees.
Yeah. What
That
about
comes up constantly.
it comes up constant. I agree with you.
It
And
does.
even when we get into the call centers, I think sometimes we don't spend a lot of time, and by we I mean like organizations don't spend a lot of time thinking about getting it right first time versus not, because there's a big difference, right, in how the customer feels about it.
Yeah, there's a huge drop. And we see it even controlling for the answer. Like it's not just that all the no's take 3 attempts and the yeses are all the 1 attempt one. Holding fixed for what the answer is, getting it right the first time is substantially better. 30, 40, 50 NPS point drop going from first time right to first time wrong, depending on what thing you're talking about and which company. It's a huge point. You're much better off with a longer, complete phone call than 3 short ones, like both from a customer experience and a cost perspective.
Yeah.
And so I think this really helps organizations get their head around, well, which drivers are we really measuring? And it's one of the interesting things, by the way, a lot of people think that our tools are only about customer satisfaction scores. This ability to link into the operations of our clients is one of the things that they actually find most valuable once they're fully in it. Like we really can speak to how to think about driving operations and what good outcomes actually look like in operational language.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of it, what we see is when it's adopted well, it's a performance improvement tool, and it can actually help look at the right cost efficiencies, investment value versus just how did you perform
Right.
versus competition on that journey from an experience
Right.
standpoint.
Yeah.
So,
And can speak to all their cost things. Like one of
yes.
the biggest cost levers our clients think about is this channel mix. Sort of how do we transition to digital? Our stuff can give a much more precise roadmap of where the push to digital can come and how high up it is and where are the places where you're actually at risk if you push too fast.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So I know we are at time, but this was a pretty healthy conversation, Jason. Thanks so much again for the time today.
Yeah.
Exciting, I
Always
think.
fun.
Yes.
Yes. Good to see you, Rahul.
Likewise. Take care.